there is no God. Prove it. Ah, I see what you did there. Yeah, because that's what you guys do. Yeah, we do that.
You are a delight.
But really, prove it. Prove what? You made the claim that there is no God. Prove it. Well, science has already proven that God doesn't exist. No, science is the study of that which occurs within the natural world. God being supernatural literally puts him outside the confines of what science is capable of studying.
Okay, so first off, I've personally never seen a serious debate in which an atheist claims that science disproves gods. The general consensus among those who do actively debate is that the more advanced science becomes, and the more knowledge we gain, the more redundant the idea of a creator God becomes. After all, no scientific discovery or breakthrough has ever concluded with, because God did it. Now, mocking the burden of proof scuffle. That was cute. But then you walked right into making a positive claim about the supernatural being real, which means the burden of proof is back on you.
Well, if you can't see, hear, taste, smell, or touch God, then no, he does not exist. Two things with that. One, you cannot taste, smell, see, touch, whatever, logic, but you know that logic exists. The same way that math exists, the same way that the laws of physics or the laws of thermodynamics exist.
So that's called a false equivalence. Unless you're saying that gods are intangible, abstract concepts of study, like logic, like math, or that they're just merely observational explanations of natural phenomena, like scientific laws. But I have a feeling that's not how you define gods. Most believers characterize gods as anthropomorphic yet non-corporeal beings that exist outside the bounds of reality and yet somehow are not imaginary. So, no, that was a bad faith comparison.
Well, that would be under the presupposition that Jesus was real. Yes, because it's an undeniable fact that Jesus of Nazareth was a real person. There is no respectable atheist scholar who would ever make the claim that he was not a real historic figure. Okay, but that doesn't mean he's God. Correct, but all the evidence around his life, that would provide a massive amount of evidence that Jesus is in fact God. Like what? Well, there's a plethora of extra-biblical documentation that is outside the Bible that would show that Jesus was claimed for doing things like miracles, that he was performing certain works that were outside the bounds of science.
And here we have more abject dishonesty from certain believers. There are no contemporaneous accounts of Jesus. And outside of the Bible, it's basically just Josephus and Tacitus that reference him within the first century and a half after his death. Tacitus mentions him as being the namesake of the Christians who were being tortured by Rome at the time, and confirms that he had been executed by Pontius Pilate. Josephus mentions Jesus twice in two completely different ways, which is why most scholars agree that the references of Jesus being the Messiah were forged. As later works by Origen of Alexandria, written less than a century after Josephus, referenced Josephus's writings, lamenting about how Josephus, who was not a Christian Jew, hadn't accepted Jesus as the Messiah.
Okay, but the people that he lived with, they're the ones who claimed that he came back from the dead. So quite literally for that would have to be like the most amazing magic trick ever produced, because they went to their deaths believing that that was real. Or they could have made it up. Well, if they made it up, psychologically, there's no way that they would be willing to die for something that they knew was a lie. But again, they were tortured. Some of them were filleted. Some of them were crucified. They were put to death in a horrible way simply because they said Jesus is God and that he rose from the dead. They could have been spared all of that if they just recanted, but none of them ever did.
Oh, come on. We've all seen what fanatics will do in the name of blind faith. It was barely 50 years ago when Jim Jones convinced hundreds of people to drink cyanide. Just a few years ago, Paul Mackenzie, pastor in Kenya, ordered hundreds of people to starve themselves to death in order to meet Jesus. And back in 1843, an indigenous shaman from Guyana convinced 400 of his people to murder each other so that they could be reincarnated as white people. Look it up. Just because some people are willing to martyr themselves doesn't legitimize their delusions.
Again, then you're just basing everything on what people said about a guy that they were obviously very biased towards. Yeah, that's true. Except that is only part of the evidence that I would have to support the claim that Jesus is God. Well, then what evidence do you have then? Well, there's the Bible.
And that's how it ends. Using the Bible to prove the Bible. What is this? What am I doing here? To paraphrase, later texts written by authors who read the earlier text confirmed the prophecies that the earlier text predicted. The only thing that proves is that you find circular arguments compelling.